Welcome to the West Valley Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Karen Rice, and I'm the senior minister of this glorious community, and I'm happy to be sitting in the chair and speaking to you today. We had a little hitch in our giddy-up, so we're happy to see that we've been able to connect with you. A little prayer, a little smart action, and all is well in this virtual world of ministry, a new way of doing ministry. So I'm just speaking a quick blessing for the remainder of the service, knowing that we are called together because there's something bigger than we are that desires for us to share this experience this morning, and I know it is good, and therefore it is very good. I say, thank you, God. I let it be, and so it is. I have something sort of exciting for us today, something a little different planned. I have a special guest sitting close to me right now, but first I want to bring you into speed with what it is that we're here to talk about this morning. The title of my message is How to Use Yesterday. And that title is actually a subheading in a chapter in the book, A New Design for Living, by the founder of this philosophy, Dr. Ernest Holmes. And he had this idea when he spoke about how we should use yesterday. He had a way of reminding us that we are a little bit of everything that's ever happened to us. And maybe even more importantly, we are also exhibiting in our physical being, in the presence that we make as individuals, we are also every thought that we have ever thought. I wanted to say thunk so bad, but anyhow, you know where I'm at here. Where every thought you ever think is a part of who you are. It contributes to that. Dr. Holmes expands that in a greater way to say not only are you every thought you ever thought, not only are you every experience that you've ever had, but you are also the result of every thought all of your ancestors ever had. And then he expands it in a bigger way. And he talks about the collective consciousness of humanity and speaks to this idea that all of us are impacted by every thought that has ever been thought throughout the history of time. And so that gives us this way of seeing that there's this connection of who we are, but also how important it is to personalize what it is we think. When I stop to ponder that very idea that I'm a little bit of everybody I've ever met and all the people that have impacted my life, then I go back to, random thoughts pop in my mind of people I've known and loved in my past, or maybe even people that you didn't like, but they somehow were a part of your experience and being. And they gave us information. I kept thinking this morning about Mary from Arkansas. We worked together at the Ozark Guidance Center. And then I was thinking about Donna from my drill team days in high school. And then I thought of Nong Nut, who was someone who served us when we lived in Bangkok, when we lived in Thailand, and how all of those people are still a part of who I am. And so there's this incredible process of life that is so indicative of the way we impact each other. But the other piece of that is that we are also always bringing meaning to our lives based on those experiences. So I was thinking about it like if you took your whole life and you threw it all together and you saw it as a recipe that makes up you, well, where we're individualized is that we spice up our life, we add seasoning to the recipe by the meaning we add to our experiences. So some of us like things really spicy and some of us don't, and all of us are very individual in the way we like to do things. And so the way we add meaning to our life, whether we're right or wrong, and honestly, when you're looking at your own individual experience of life, you can never be wrong because the meaning you give it is true to you at the moment. But that means also that everybody else is seeing truth in their experience as well as they're seasoning their life. Now, I loved my mother's tamale pie. My mom made the best tamale pie in the whole world. Nobody made tamale pie like mine, and like my mom's anyhow. And my mom gave me that recipe. She wrote it out in her own handwriting, and I now have that framed, and it sits on one of my altars at home where I study in the morning, because it's in her handwriting, and it's her tamale pie that I loved so much. And you know how this is going to end. You know how this story ends. In the many, many times I have tried to imitate my mother's tamale pie, I have never been able to do it, because there's just nobody did it quite like Mom. And that's how life is. So let me read to you a quote I found, the quote that inspired me in putting this message together, that comes from that chapter in the book from Ernest Holmes, How to Use Yesterday. And here are his words. The past was of value. It served its purpose. Properly approached, it can serve us wisely rather than burden us down. We can let the past teach us many lessons, but we must not let it dictate the nature of our future. And I love that about our teaching. It is the primary, one of the core ideas of our teaching that I like to bring up again and again, so that we can remember that we're always spicing our life up by the meaning that we give to things. And the important part is that we don't let what happened in our past weigh us down, so that we're not living this big, vibrant future that God intended for us to have as our experience. How we use yesterday determines the outcome of our life today. And that's really good news if you keep it in the proper perspective. You're the only one that gets to tell the stories of your experiences in terms of what it means to you. But at the same time, there are lots of versions of your experiences. I just find it so intriguing that siblings raised in the same home by the same two parents even do not seem to share the same childhood stories. And that's a uniqueness that is important for us to look at. That's a way to use yesterday, just to see how many individual eyes are. We have 4 kids, none of them have the same story. And their memories, they can have the same memories, but boy, they tell it with different levels of passion. And it's just a beautiful thing in life. I also was then thinking about how in the workplace we have supervisors or bosses, and you have a relationship with that person that supervises you. Did you ever have a boss that just didn't get you? And then on the other hand, you probably also have had a boss or a supervisor in your life who you didn't think got you at all, but they saw better in you, and they were always calling you to rise without you even knowing that. They just saw potential in you that you didn't know you had, and so you learned more skills and you did better. I love that saying, when we know better, we do better. And in the same way, then I had this thought. I remember after my mother made her transition, and people would call me and tell me these amazing stories about my mom and the relationship they had with her. And I thought, that is not a woman I knew, right? And so the same is true of us. So like your children, if you have kids, your children do not know you in the way your best friend knows you, nor does it work the other way around. I don't know my kids in the way their best friends know them, because we're in each other's lives for different reasons and different levels of learning and opportunities to expand in our own personal growth and the ascension of our consciousness in understanding the basic things of life. Then if you really want to make it interesting, you've got partners. I have a partner. I have a spouse. That's my surprise. It's probably not a surprise for all of you, because yesterday I put a teaser out on Facebook that I would be inviting my beloved, I actually called him my controversial spouse, because what's really beautiful about Hugh and I is that we are really different people. And somehow we've made it work. So the day before yesterday, Hugh and I celebrated our 49th wedding anniversary. And so if you, Julie, would now include my beloved spouse in the view so all the viewers can see us both together in the same picture. Hi, honey.
Hello.
I see you. So I had this idea that couples share experiences and also have different ideas. So I'm not trying to demonstrate differences, but I thought it would be sweet if we took an opportunity to just hear how Hugh would respond to some of my questions. Are you game?
Uh-huh.
This is completely unrehearsed. I don't know what I was thinking. I came in this morning, and Cheryl is here this morning with us, and I said to Cheryl, well, I'm having Hugh on the platform with me, and she said, oh, that's so good. And I said, I don't know yet. We'll see.
Well, I do kind of feel like I'm dove hunting, but I'm the dove.
No, they're not trick questions, my darling. I love you. 50th year. We're in our 50th year of a walk of life. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So on our anniversary, we had a special meal at home that both of us prepared. We did a little grilling. I cooked inside, he cooked outside, and we reminisced. And we talked about the parts of our marriage in which how they were different, you know, and you're raising kids. It's different than when you get to that empty nest. That's different when you get to share those greater, wonderful experiences. That's different than retirement and now. So my first question, I thought, is a pretty universal question, one that we get asked often, and that is, what is your response to the question when people ask you, how did you stay married so long?
Well, my wife, Karen, on our 30th anniversary was asked that question. And I'm going to stick with that answer. She says we both never gave up at the same time. And you are going to have conflicts in life because we're different people.
How different are we?
Oh, not at all. I'm 6.5 feet tall, 1/8 of a ton. She's 5 foot even. But from there on, we're just exactly the same. Super conservative.
Not me.
Not. She has to post on Facebook that she does not necessarily agree with my postings. You know, so, and I had a ball our whole life on account of that.
Yes.
One of the my shares that mean the most to me was before we were married, I was pretty well a lost soul. You know, I was 27, been through some interesting things, and I was just living to race my motorcycle. That was it. I had no other goal. My whole focus was that, my job, because I had to eat. And on the way to the races, I read the horoscope, and it says, oh, buddy, this is your day. You are going to just tear it up. It's going to be a great day. And I was all amped up. And I was doing desert racing at the time, where you line up 800 guys in the desert and you go as fast as you can on your motorcycle. It's just a really brilliant thing to do. And I got a heck of a start. I'm running in the top of the pack, and I'm like, yeah, best day of my life. And I did an end over, and I broke up a lot of my body and my bike.
You're saying you crashed your bike?
Yes, I did. On purpose, apparently. and I'm riding back with my buddy heading to the hospital, and I'm going, best day of my life, what the heck? And that evening, here comes my favorite little waitress that I adore with homemade chocolate chip cookies, which are my favorite. And I looked in her eyes, and I finally saw her. I mean, I was so not in the game. I mean, I would sit in the restaurant and write poetry on napkins and just leave because I didn't care. It was just, you know, what I did.
and I would steal the napkins out of the bus cart later and save them.
She did. So anyway, I looked at my little sweet buddy and I said, oh my God, this is the best day of my life.
Oh, I love that story. A girl just can't hear that story enough. I love that story. Tell me, honey, tell me one important thing that you learned from your past experiences in life. Without a long story, because really this is my gig.
I know. The Lux Theater present. No.
One important thing from your experiences.
Well, I learned to never give up. And there were times, I mean, you know, I just learned never to give up.
Oh, we have a question from the audience.
Hugh, what do you think built that resilience to help you never give
Do
up?
what?
What helped you build the resilience to never give up?
Well, it's the experience of failure, actually, and realizing that failure didn't kill you. So, what the heck, get up again, try again.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm so grateful that you would come sit with us.
Thank you, dear.
We've shared a lot of yesterdays.
Yes, we have.
We've shared a lot of yesterdays, and we've done a good job at it. I would say we've done a good job of making up a story that works for us.
Oh my God, yeah.
I'm grateful you're here.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
All right, so say goodbye.
Bye. Meanwhile, back to the show.
Oh my goodness, that was fun. Thank you, everybody. How to use yesterday. How do we build that resilience? How do we make sense of things when it doesn't seem to make sense sometimes? I want to read to you another quote from Dr. Holmes from that same chapter in How to Use Yesterday. He said, "We should use our past much the same as science does. Investigations and research prove that new thought, scientific thought, is valuable. Old ideas are changed to conform with new knowledge." This is really an important element of life, that we always are getting new information, and that the ideas in the way we live our lives and in the consciousness of humanity stay a certain shape for a while, and then new information comes, and we're given this opportunity to, feels like a big shakeup, but then we start thinking in different ways. You know, Hugh and I were watching something on TV. I want to say it was one of those classic movie channels, the old black and white movies, and there was a scene in a room with a lot of people, and everybody was smoking except one person. So everybody's got a lit cigarette. There's a lot of smoke in the room, and this one person was fanning the smoke away, complaining, and said, "You know, mark my word, one day they're going to find out those things are bad for you." And we laughed. We really chuckled at that whole idea, because of course the world has changed, and now it's no longer cool you don't look cool when you're smoking. You're almost an outcast now. So there's a way we are invited to be open to that growth. And the founder of this teaching always referred to it as being open at the top. I always see it like a funnel, you know, this way that we keep open at the top, and he then follows that by saying that there's always an influx of divine wisdom that desires to sort of fall upon us. And so in the same way, I didn't used to eat avocados because they were fattening. I now eat avocados because we have all this evidence that they're good for you. But more important, the meaning that we give to what we enjoy, what we desire to experience in our life, is what really flavors it, or is that seasoning. It is true that some of our harshest experiences in life have brought us the greatest wisdom. But it is also true that we often don't get that wisdom for some time until we are looking back at whatever it is that happened that seemed so horrible in the beginning, like that song "Yesterday" by the Beatles. Yesterday. I can't think of it now.
All our troubles seem so far away.
All my troubles seem so far away. Now it seems as though they're here to stay. So when we go through something hard, in the case of this love song, it's a breakup. It's someone's we have that sadness over that parting, that separation, that we can't be with that one anymore. But if we walk through those harsh experiences and we get down the road, what we begin to notice in our wisdom is other things happen. The harsh experiences of life often redirect us. They throw us in an unexpected shift of a trajectory that we did not see coming, and we thought we were going that way, and now we're headed that way. And over time, if we are willing to use our yesterdays in a practical way, in time, we'll begin to see that the handprints of God are all over our life and our circumstances. So I am not suggesting that God throws obstructions in our life to redirect us. What I'm saying is that we move through our lives with this choice, with this abundant, amazing, inexhaustible supply of opportunities and choices and possibilities. And we choose, and then we give meaning to those things. And if they don't work out well, we choose again, and we get to move in a different direction. But the wisdom comes for us when we realize that the fingerprints of God are all over our life, because there is no place where God is not. We could not possibly move through a single experience without having the presence of that divinity, and therefore the divine wisdom to use those experiences is ever present, and it never lessens. It's never too late to look back on experiences and garnish or harvest the wisdom that is there. So it feels in many ways, what a great teaching we have here, the science of mind, religious science, not to be confused with Scientology or Christian Science, but certainly a part of New Thought. What a great, gorgeous teaching this is, where when you first kind of get acquainted with it, it feels like it's a good way to learn how to be a more positive thinker. But if you stick around, and begin to grab onto the principle behind the wisdom of positive thinking, you learn that it is much vaster than you first thought. That we are really about this educational, spiritual teaching that trains our minds to look for how to use yesterday, to look for a higher meaning in a situation that maybe we didn't have the wisdom to elevate our thinking yesterday or a year ago or 10 years ago. That there is a divine pattern unfolding in our lives, and our goal as spiritual beings is just to find our way to get in the flow of that divine current of life that is our life. So our teaching has been around for more than 100 years. This little book is called Creative Mind, and Dr. Holmes, this was the very first book he ever wrote, and we look at it as sort of the kickoff of the teaching itself. 1918 is when we sort of estimate the beginning of our teaching. So more than 100 years ago, this book was penned by Dr. Ernest Holmes at a time when the world was in this radical period of change. It was the end of World War I. It was during the great influenza epidemic that they called it at the time. And they were on the verge of the prosperous roaring 20s, but they weren't able to see that yet. You could say it was definitely a period of immense change happening throughout the world. And I imagine that people felt pretty out of control of their lives. The conditions in their lives seemed right in their face. in a very similar way that we are feeling the same today in our own lives. And I think for that reason, it reminds me how valuable it is to revisit these early words that have never lost their value. And I'm so happy to say that we have not changed the wording in these original books. They are presented to us in the original wording of the founder in the way that he intended. And you can't always say that's true. Eventually, there are people pushing to get the outdated gender references and to kind of clean it up. But I love that I will always have these original wordings. Here is the introduction to the book that Ernest Holmes wrote the introduction on October 1st, 1918. Here's the first paragraph. The hand of eternal progress is brushing the cobwebs from the corridors of time, and it is again revealing to the human race the mysteries of being. Can you hear the eternality of that sentence? That we're moving the cobwebs of time, of progress. The progress comes and pushes away the cobwebs of time from the past, and it reveals in that way to the human race again, he says again, because this is an ongoing process, the mysteries of being. I have never heard that sentence myself, even though I've used this quote many times. I have never heard it with as much relevance as I do today. He says, there's nothing new under the sun. The searchlight of truth is bringing to light only what has been known to a few in every generation. We are learning to understand the great laws that govern our life. This was true then, and this is especially true today. We are looking at spiritual laws and how to apply them in this changing world that we are living in now. He says, and this is the most important, precious part, we must learn to control our own destiny. We must learn to heal our own body and to bring happiness into our own soul. We must learn we are no longer governed by anything outside of ourselves. It's time for us to choose and to stand in these eternal truths and make meaning of our own experiences, but to also make meaning of the change going on in the world around us. This philosophy we teach is relevant and lasting because the first premise we stand on is that thoughts are causative. That what we think about everything makes a difference in how we live our life and what our individual lives look like. And we are in choice. We get to do that in any way we feel called to do that. And sometimes it will look different than your beloved. Sometimes it will look different than your children would like it to look like, or the other way around. And sometimes we might be a little afraid by how different political views and social movements can look when it sounds like we're having big discussions, while in reality we are expanding our consciousness in a collective way greater than we have ever done in the history of humanity. I am absolutely convinced of that. So the very concept, the idea that we call this teaching a part of New Thought. See, New Thought is bigger than religious science. New Thought is all of unity and divine science and all kinds of little independent teachings that fill in, and they all study the same great thinkers from about the same time period, where people began to put validity in ideas of mental healing, that we do have a power within us that is greater than we are, that we can align ourselves to and change our life in those ways he said, that we can we can have control of our conditions and our health and our happiness. And so we call it New Thought because it is our invitation to have a new thought around the ancient wisdom that has always existed. It is just another way we can use yesterday. When we are open at the top, when we are open to an influx of new ideas, we don't ever have to defend ourselves. We don't have to defend our ideas. I think I would say that a lengthy marriage, he's right, I love to say that the reason we're still married is because we just both didn't quit at the same time. It's not because we did anything special, unless that's probably pretty special. Probably would have been easier to quit a few times. It's not like we didn't quit individually. It's just that one of us was always invested. And so when I look at humanity and I think that there always, at all times, there is more than one of us invested on keeping this vision open at the top for a world that is changing. Yes, we are moving in consciousness, and that is a damn good thing. Yesterday has served us, and now there is more, because that's how life works. We always admire our greatness and remember that tomorrow there is always more. Everything we stand for in this teaching is about our dedication to the action of choosing. And though that can feel complicated, I want to really remind you it doesn't have to be. If you're really attached to your old views and to your growing opinions, then maybe, yes, it'll be a little harder than it needs to be. But our dedication to the action of choosing is where our power lies, because then we are open. That is the place we're not guarded and defending, but we are open, and we can align ourselves to a power of vision that is greater than our own vision. We live a life that's worth living when we are willing to cultivate our own inner values. And I think that life is an ongoing process of that type of cultivation. It's about blending reasoning with reverence. I love that idea that we're always, when I'm going to season my life, I want to blend in the same way I have blended in my marriage with this man over all these years. I'm going to blend that reasoning with reverence. In that way, we will always have respect on some level. No matter what, we will always have respect because we know that we are rooted in a deep, deep love. So here in the West Valley, at this particular spiritual center, we have been having what I like to call prophetic conversations about this evolutionary change, this spiritual evolution that's been going on not only here, but around the world, and in a bigger way, the entire universe. We are stepping into a new consciousness. We are waking up, and we are standing in the grace of an expanded awareness. And so I thought I would close this morning with a reading from Creative Mind and Success, a reading from the chapter entitled Living in the Present. Life is for us today. There will be no change tomorrow unless we do the changing today. Today we are setting in motion the power of tomorrow. Today is God's day, and we must extract from it what of life we are to live. The soul that learns to live in the great gladness of today will never weary of life. The time is at hand. It is indeed the greatest age of all of history, because we are unifying in the beautiful way that Ernest Holmes said, we are unifying all people, all things, in that ever-present one. And so it is in that essence of oneness that I turn within. If you'll join me in the words of prayer, we will just anchor these ideas in the way that we have looked at harvesting the wisdom of yesterday, so that we can experience a greater immediacy of the present now. So as we still our minds, we become aware of that movement of life within us, the indwelling presence of the Most High, and I feel the love of God within me. I feel that love as that motion of spirit. And I know as I rest in this peace of God, the peace that is beyond our human understanding, I know that all is well in my world. And so we come together in this magnificent Sunday morning to recognize that we are individualized expressions of something that is so much greater than we are, and that all the power of the universe is within our reach, and that we can use our experiences and we can season them with the divine meaning of life as we look for that expanded understanding, as we allow ourselves to stay open at the top, to become increasingly aware of this way in which humanity is stretching in its soul and its consciousness, in the way that we are changing the humankind in every way imaginable. And we stand strong, and we stand in faith, and we stand in service, knowing that the way that we show up to love this universe, to love life, and to love and respect our own lives and each other, that we unify in that way that is the divine purpose for all of life, that every part has a place and a reason. And that when we stand back and we look at this, we can have that divine reverence, and we can see the handprints of God all over everything that is changing and moving and being divinely reordered in order for us all to experience a more perfect expression of life. And so right now I declare that I get out of the way of any limitations that I might be tempted to imagine, and I allow Spirit itself to just burst away or obliterate any obstructions that stand in the way of that expansive consciousness that is a quantum leap on this planet at this time. And we brush away the cobwebs of our own mind, and we align our minds to the mind of God, and we stand united together, knowing that all is well. We are healed. We are restored to our wholeness. We feel that sense of comfort in our beings, even if it's fleeting for a moment. The truth is that it is always anchored at the center and the core of who and what we are, because we know we are children of the divine, created in the image and the likeness. And so I say thank you, God. Thank you, Infinite Spirit. Thank you, life. I am so grateful to be sitting with my beloved, to be sitting with this spiritual community, and to know that the goodness that we gather today in our togetherness ripples out and does good work in the world and returns to us multiplied abundantly. And in that spirit of pure gratitude, I release this time and these words. We allow them to be, and together we say, and so it is. Thank you. Thank you for hanging in there when we had a little delay. I am grateful. I'm so grateful, and I'm expressing my gratitude. One of the ways I like to express my gratitude is by putting in the offering plate my tithe for the week. So thank you so much, all of you. You're finding your ways to get your tithes to the center so that we can continue doing this good work. I am especially grateful today to the staff that you wouldn't believe the miracles they do before we hit play, and they are here every week, and we wouldn't be here without you. Thank you so much, and I love you, and there will be more to come. I have changed the date for our gathering in the blessing of the building, the external, to give our thanks for the painting. We will be doing an evening prayer circle around the building. I believe it's on it's the last Thursday in July. I want to say it's the 30th. And we're still not saying when we're going to meet together in the sanctuary until the numbers change a little bit. We're going to stay remote because that seems to be the smartest thing to do. So thank you for being here. I love you. Namaste. See you again.